Good afternoon. Well, I really better be great because I made you guys wait for a long time, didn't I? Great. So my name is Max Martinez Almenas, and I am the director of a documentary based on my grandfather and his three brothers. And the title of the documentary is Martinez Brothers, the untold baseball story of talent, tragedy, and legacy. And I'd like to introduce my son Adam here. And so I'm starting with a shout out to Adam because he was recently awarded a SABR's Yoslef Scholarship to encourage high school and college level student engagement with baseball research and to engender an active interest in baseball and SABR. The Yoslef Scholarship was created to assist young researchers who want to attend a SABR conference and to introduce them to fellow SABR members. So everyone say hello to Adam. So they're still working on the screen behind me, but I'll just continue. Through this fund, SABR hopes to inspire future baseball research, expose students to high quality research, and build the research capability of interested students. The Yoslef Scholarship also enabled us to be here today. So thank you, SABR, Jerry Malloy Negro League Conference, and Leslie and her amazing staff. So by show of hands, how many of you were aware or know of Horatio Rabbit Martinez? Wow, it's actually better than I thought. You guys don't count, but your family. That's pretty amazing. We appreciate those of you who know this little known baseball history, but there are many more who do not. So allow me to provide some highlights and to set up the context of this impact, not just in the 1930s and 40s, but how the rabbit effect is still seen and felt today. And you're still not seeing. Are they trying to get this? Yeah, all right. All right, so I guess I'll keep going then. All right, so. Did you know Horatio Rabbit Martinez was an Afro-Latino shortstop and second baseman for the New York Cubans from 1935 to 1936 and from 1940 to 1947. He was a five-time All-Star in the East-West All-Star Games in 1940, 41, 43, 44, and 45, and batted .545 in a field of players that included the GOAT, Josh Gibson, Buck Leonard, Monty Irvin, Roy Campanella, Satchel Paige, and teammates, and the immortal Martin Dihigo, and Juan de la Vargas, who was credited with the highest single-season batting title with a .471 average after the recent integration of statistics, which was announced by MLB just a few days ago. Rabbit was the first and only Dominican to participate in the Negro League World Series in 1935 and 1947, when the New York Cubans defeated the Cleveland Buckeyes. He's the only Dominican professional baseball player to ever play against Babe Ruth in any game during a doubleheader exhibition on September 29th, 1935, at Dyckman Oval Stadium in New York City. As a scout for the New York and San Francisco Giants, upon his retirement from playing, Horatio Martinez opened the original talent pipeline, or first wave of professional baseball players from the Dominican Republic into Major League Baseball. So I'm going to let him fix this because my favorite picture of Rabbit is showing right now. And when you see it, you'll understand why. It was taken by a famous African-American photographer named Teenie Harris, whose exhibit can be seen at the Carnegie Museum in Pittsburgh. And that photo, yeah, right? Let's hear it for the IT guy. For lack of better terms, I don't know what you.
Nope, I'm the IT guy.
All right, awesome. I know because I work with IT guys and they're amazing. What would we do without them today, right? Okay, so thank you very much for that. And let's see, where was I? So as a scout for the New York Giants, New York and San Francisco Giants upon his retirement, because he was there during the transition from playing, Horatio Martinez opened the original talent pipeline. So upon his retirement from playing, Horatio Martinez opened the original talent pipeline, or first wave of professional baseball players from the Dominican Republic into Major League Baseball. Horatio signed the first Dominican ball player inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame, Juan Marichal. He also discovered and signed MLB pioneers and brothers, Felipe, Matty, and Jesus. Rabbit also signed Manny Mota, arguably the best pinch hitter in MLB history, who was recently inducted into the Legends of Dodgers Baseball by the Los Angeles Dodgers. In 1951, Horacio and Enrique Lantigua, another member of the New York Cubans, became the original founding fathers of the Dominican Republic's first professional baseball players union, known as Federación Nacional de Peloteros Profesionales de la República Dominicana, or FENEPEPRO. Horacio Martinez was inducted into the Dominican Sports Hall of Fame, also known as Pabellón de Fama, in 1970, and the Latino Baseball Hall of Fame, El Salón de la Fama del Béisbol Latino, in 2011. In 2005, Martinez became one of 94 preliminary candidates named by the National Baseball Hall of Fame's Special Committee on the Negro Leagues. Unfortunately, he was not one of the 39 that made the final cut. Our hope is when you hear his untold story here and through our documentary, he will be a few steps closer to immortality. Let's take a look inside. Let's take a closer look. Inside these hollowed halls of the Baseball Hall of Fame, visitors can imagine the cheers of fans and the names of legends who have left an indelible mark on the sport. Yet amidst the celebrated figures, a notable omission exists: the absence of Horatio Rabbit Martinez. In baseball, where playing, coaching, managing, and scouting intertwine, Martinez emerges as a pioneer whose legacy deserves profound recognition. His nickname was the Rabbit, due to his speed and ability to steal bases. He was such a sensational shortstop in 1942, 5 years before Jackie Robinson joined the Brooklyn Dodgers. The Gazette said Horatio was in line for a tryout with the Pittsburgh Pirates, but it never materialized. In 1943, during World War II, Major League teams increasingly turned to Latin America to replace players who left to serve in the war, but only if they had the right color skin. The Washington Senators were keen on signing Rabbit, but Alejandro Alex Pompez, the owner of the Negro League team, the New York Cubans, told sports writer Lem Graves Jr. of the Black Weekly Norfolk Journal and Guide, that's a mouthful, he would have had opportunities to sell Martinez to Washington and other major league teams if Rabbit had possessed the slick hair. In those days, the other measure was if your skin was as dark as a brown paper bag, you were out. But Rabbit was not done yet. While he could not break the color barrier as a pioneer player, he made it his mission to ensure that those who came before him would. His post-player years distinguished him as a mentor, father figure, and deluxe scout to many. But before we go further, let's explore the historical events that led from Rabbit the player to Rabbit the coach, manager, and deluxe scout. In 1935, El Inmortal Martín Dihigo came to the Dominican Republic in search of an all-star player for the New York Cubans team he managed back in the States, and he found it in Rabbit Martinez. Horacio's three other brothers, Doñito, my grandfather, and uncles, Aguilas and Julio, played for the same team, the Santiago Baseball Club. Julio was the bat boy at the time, but as time goes on, you'll see how this team makes history in the most profound ways. In 1937, Dominican dictator Rafael Trujillo drummed up support for his re-election by combining two established rival teams, Tigres del Licey and Leones de Escogido, and renamed them Dragones de Ciudad Trujillo. And he then recruited some of the biggest names in Negro League Baseball, many of whom played with or versus Martinez in the US, including the legendary Satchel Paige, Cool Papa Bell, Josh Gibson, and others. Trujillo also brought in Cuban stars Tony Castaño, Cuco Correo, Rodolfo Fernandez, and heavy hitter Perucho Cepeda from Puerto Rico to minimize any chance of losing. And the only Dominican on that team was Enrique Lantigua. Remember that name. Although the Dragones won the championship that year, the American megastars returned to their countries. Trujillo and the other club owners who had paid them exorbitant salaries left the league broke. Dominican baseball would remain dormant for the next 14 years. Meanwhile, in New York, after a couple of solid seasons, which included a pennant in his first year, Martinez and teammates suddenly found themselves benched because Pompez exiled himself to Mexico due to racketeering charges brought on by Special Prosecutor Thomas Dewey. According to the Horatio Rabbit Martinez SABR biography by Rory Costello, Pompez ran an illegal numbers lottery in Harlem for years, but it finally caught up with him. Just to be fair, several Negro League team owners also ran numbers to supplement their revenues. With no player association to help ball players make ends meet, Martinez joined the winter leagues in the Caribbean, South and Central America. In Cuba, he played with Hall of Famer Martin Dihigo and Willie Wells for teams like Santa Clara, Rojos de la Habana, and Almendares. He also played in Puerto Rico, Venezuela, Panama, and coached in Mexico. He returned to the New York Cubans in 1939 after Pompez was cleared by law enforcement on the condition he no longer ran numbers. Horacio's brother, Achilles Martinez, one of the greatest second basemen produced by the Dominican Republic, won the Golden Glove in the Amateur Baseball World Series held in Havana, Cuba in 1941, 42, and 43, and in Caracas, Venezuela in 1944. He also excelled in tournaments in Santiago and in the capital with the Cerveceros de Presidente or Presidente beer brewers during the 1940s. Meanwhile, in DR, Lantigua, who played with the New York Cubans in 1935, was a member of the Dominican national team that won silver in the 1942 Amateur World Series and bronze in the 1943 Amateur World Series. In the winter, Martinez returned to play in the Dominican Republic, but grew frustrated by the lack of organization and protection for players. On December 27, 1950, Rabbit, Lantigua, and Tirso Valdez became the founding fathers of the first professional baseball union, Federación Dominicana de Peloteros Profesionales. This was the birth of the first professional baseball players union in the Dominican Republic and predates MLB's Players Union in the United States by 3 years. According to sports historian Fernando Viscoso and Mario Alvarez Dugan, authors of the book Dominican Baseball 1891 to 1967, the players joined forces with sports figures from the capital city. They received financial backing from commercial firms, including industrialist Julian Barcelo and national sports authorities. Roberto Martinez, son of Horacio Martinez, said to us in a 2023 phone interview that his father canvassed the entire island in search of baseball enthusiasts with deep pockets to help fund the Players Association to save the country's favorite sport and protect its professional players. They succeeded and baseball was reborn. After 4 summer championships of local baseball were organized, the next critical revival was the establishment of the Dominican Professional Baseball League, LIDOM, in 1951. LIDOM standardized the sport, scheduled regular games, and reignited fan enthusiasm. Together with FENIPEPRO, it has since been instrumental in developing local talent and facilitating their transition in Major League Baseball, where Martinez was already scouting for MLB. This countrywide movement, spearheaded by individuals like Martinez, reaffirmed baseball's place as a central element of the Dominican culture and social landscape, and enabled Rabbit to develop future MLB rookies and Hall of Fame players. Back in the States, Martinez, who got a taste of the big show, having played in some of the greatest baseball cathedrals, including Polo Grounds, Forbes Field, Kaminsky Park, and the original Yankee Stadium, was already past his prime when number 42, Jackie Robinson, crossed the segregation line, and his MLB dreams had all but faded. But he found glimmers of light in some of his young countrymen who were his students and key ball players while coaching at the university level in the Dominican Republic. He foresaw the future of MLB in their eyes.
University Dynamo. In the late 1940s and 50s, the University of Santo Domingo found its beacon in Martinez. As a coach and later director of the physical education department, he elevated the college's baseball team to unparalleled heights after discovering and honing the talents of college students like baseball pioneer Felipe Alou, who was a medical student at the university, and his 2 brothers, Jose and Mateo. Felipe Alou was the first Dominican to go straight from his homeland to the big leagues. Ozzie Virgil earned the distinction of being the first Dominican born to play in the MLB after his family moved to New York when he was 13, and he was noticed by scouts while playing high school baseball in the Bronx.
Just hit the space. Just hit the space.
Alou, Guki, and University Ball. Alou became the first Dominican-born manager in Major League Baseball history. According to MLB, and won 1,033 games over his 14 seasons at the helm of the Expos and Giants. According to the book Historia del Baseball Dominicano by Dominican sports historian Cookie Quiroga, Martinez's coaching tenure at the University of Santo Domingo showcased his vision and discipline. His ability to elevate young talent, often bridging language and segregated social gaps, revealed a profound skill set that would serve him well as a scout for the New York/San Francisco Giants. Under Martinez's management, the University Class A baseball team embarked on journeys beyond borders, from playing in Aruba in 1951 to hosting renowned North American universities like Cornell and Yale in 1953. Horacio's leadership and keen instincts for talent transcended geographical boundaries. In May and June of 1954, Horatio and his men toured the American collegiate circuit against university baseball teams from Fordham, Yale, Cornell, West Point, Colgate, and Pennsylvania. The Deluxe Scout. According to SABR's Dominicans in the Major Leagues, in 2022 by Bill Nolan and Julio M. Rodriguez, Cubans brought baseball to the Dominican Republic in the year 1891. With Cuba's exit from professional baseball following Fidel Castro's rise to power in 1959 and leading teams on the rise again, the Dominican Republic emerged as the nation with the most significant baseball potential. As a result, Horatio became the Deluxe Scout. Alex Pompez recognized Horatio Martinez's instinct for great talent and made him the principal scout in the Dominican Republic for the Giants. As a result, Martinez signed Juan the Dominican Danny Marichal. Juan Marichal, the first Dominican inducted. Juan Marichal was a 10-time All-Star and earned MVP in 1965. In 1983, Marichal became the first native of the Dominican Republic to be elected to the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. Martinez also signed Elias Sosa and Manny Mota, the sixth player inducted into the Legends of Dodger Baseball. And while Felipe Alou has not been inducted yet, he too blazed a trail for future Dominican and Afro-Latinos to play.
Before all the baseball milestones in the 1950s, the Alou brothers and other Afro-Latinos would struggle on their way to the mountaintop, often wondering if playing baseball was worth the trouble due to Jim Crow laws that forbade integrated facilities and interracial competition. Local police enforcing these rules prevented Alou and his Black American teammates from dressing in their team's locker room, and playing games in certain cities. Alou told sports historian Rob Rock, author of The Tropic of Baseball, when he encountered racism on a long bus trip to the Deep South, and young Felipe was tempted to quit and go back home. Instead, open quote, I thought about Horacio Martinez, not so much my mom and dad. I didn't want to let him down, and I stayed. Alou went on to inspire many young Dominican ball players to follow. As a result, Rabbit recognized the value of teaching cultural literacy and rudimentary English language skills to new players unfamiliar with the language and cultural barriers in the United States. In 1963, Felipe wrote an influential article titled Latin American Players Need a Bill of Rights. Alou called for Latino players to have a representative in the commissioner's office who could address their unique experiences and challenges in baseball. His advocacy helped shed light on racial segregation and the need for better support for Latin players in Major League Baseball. You can see a copy of it here at the Hall of Fame in the Viva Baseball exhibit. But Martinez's multi-general legacy in the pages of MLB history could have the most significant impact they've made. The Alou brothers not only made up the first all-brother outfield in MLB with the Giants, but they had children and grandchildren who also became major league players. It was a short time before the Dominican talent pipeline created by Martinez and Pompez for the Giants inspired other major league teams to follow. Eventually, all 30 MLB teams built their official baseball academies in the Dominican Republic to develop young talent and future Hall of Famers. When Horacio's story emerges as a beacon of resilience and mentorship, his journey is intertwined with one of the worst tragedies in sports history. Two of Rabbit's brothers and their entire team, the Santiago Baseball Club, had been competing for weeks against the top ball clubs in DR for a shot at the national title. The main objective of the tournament was to select the national team to face the Brooklyn Dodgers, including Jackie Robinson and the Montreal Royals, in spring training games. On January 11, 1948, when only a few teams were left standing, Las Estrellas del Sur, which was owned by the dictator, Presidente Rafael Trujillo, found themselves facing the Santiago team, which was leading the tournament and considered to have the best players at the time, including my grandfather, Toñito Martinez, the catcher known as El Tanquecito de 50 toneladas de Cibao, or 50-ton tank of Cibao. Martinez and the second baseman, Achilles Martinez, who Rabbit claimed was the best of the Martinez brothers, and their cousin, Alberto Mimo Estrella, one of the pitchers. While the doubleheader was a nail-biter, with Las Estrellas del Sur taking the first game, Santiago BBC won the second game 9-2, and the Martinez brothers team was ready to advance to the next round on a trajectory to take home the trophy. As the team was boarding the plane back to Santiago, their catcher, Enrique Lantigua, was said to have experienced a premonition and decided to drive back to Santiago. The plane, which was owned by Trujillo, experienced mechanical difficulties. According to the New York Times article, 2 days later, the plane apparently lost or was out of gas, seeking a forced landing, smashed into the hill and scattered the bodies of the victims all over a wide area. It was the worst air tragedy in Dominican history. Ironically, the Santiago airport tower was also having issues with its lighting and antenna, and the pilot attempted to fly back to the capital, but went down over the Rio Verde Mountains in Yamasa, Monte Plata province. All 32 lives were lost, including 18 players, coaches, medical staff, reporters, and pilots, and a second plane with fans made it easily back home. This is the first and only air tragedy in the world that records the death of an entire team, according to sports journalist Rafael Baldayak. To this day, it's the only professional baseball team to experience a fatal airline tragedy. The youngest Martinez brother, Julio, also known as Julito, served as a bat boy for Santiago, but survived that fateful day because he happened to be playing for another team. After the Santiago Baseball Club was reorganized as the Águilas Ibeñas in 1951, Julio and that team won their first 22 national championship games. The only survivor of the plane crash was catcher Enrique Landigua, who was said to have driven back instead of boarding the plane because of a premonition. He told historian Cookie Cordova he didn't enjoy the turbulence in the flight and decided to drive out of Barahona instead. This immense tragedy was not only a deep loss for the country, which was mourned for years. The Rio Verde air accident has made a major impact on major leagues. It's believed to have influenced the reluctance of major league players to travel by air, according to La Nacional. Due to proximity, most teams traveled by train between cities. However, in '46, the Yankees began air travel, which most players rejected after the '48 Dominican plane crash, saying, I'd rather arrive late alive than early dead, said a Yankees player, according to Havana's Diario de la Marina. According to the New York Times, MLB didn't implement a disaster draft until 1965. Other leagues were spurred to develop their own plans after a crash in 1970 that killed 38 members of the Marshall University football team, along with several of the squad's coaches. In all the major sports, if several base players are disabled or killed, the team is expected to supplement its roster by bringing up minor league or acquiring other players. But in a wide-scale tragedy, each of the other teams in the league would provide players for the disabled franchise. Lantigua went on to manage the Dominicans to the 1948 Amateur World Series, their first world title. He also guided them to the 1950 Amateur World Series. The entire country and the Latin American community mourned the loss for months. Santiago Baseball Club was the team where all four Martinez brothers started their careers. During an interview with Horacio Martinez Thurman Jr., grandson of Horacio Martinez, he reflected on how the Martinez brothers were legendary together. Donito played first, Julio was the second baseman, my grandfather was at shortstop, and Aquiles at third, described Martinez. It was said that when the Martinez brothers were in the field, the ball never entered the outfield. And apparently I'm gonna have to wrap it up there because they've been trying to get me off for a while. But if you'd like to learn more about the documentary and the Martinez brothers, you can go to martinezbrothersfilms.com. That's spelled, the baseball is spelled with the Spanish spelling, BEISBOL, films.com. And if you'd like to partner with us for the documentary, we couldn't think of a better place to have some of our first partners join us on this amazing journey than the National Baseball Hall of Fame. We'd like to thank the Jerry Malloy Negro League Conference for their support. And thank you for listening to our story. God bless.